All right, welcome in. Welcome in. We are waiting for confirmation that we are live, and we are live. Hey, this is Reverend Dr. Stephen J. 𝗔𝘂𝗴𝘂𝗀 with Unity Prosperity Ocean International. Welcome into this, what I'm calling a special edition. I hope you can hear me all right. If you are in the chat and you are receiving this, please give me a thumbs up that you can indeed hear me, or let me know that you can hear me okay, because I don't have this plugged in. So I'm going to take this off so it's not distracting. Special edition. Why? It was one of those, you ever have one of those technological days where just everything, buttons were missing, things didn't seem to click, and everywhere you went, it just wasn't working. We even switched computers and, oh, changing horses in midstream and all that kind of thing. So this talk was so good, so powerful, so appreciated, and everybody seemed to love it. So I said, I got to capture it. And we thought we hit the record button, didn't happen. We thought we made the connection button to our social media pages and to Facebook for YouTube and for all that other stuff, didn't happen. But I know that this message has to be seen and heard by as many people as we can get it to. So I am glad you came back. Plus, I did my preview this morning and I promised that I would be delivering it here at 9 a.m. Central Time. So I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. Technology, just not to make an excuse or blame anything else. We had backup after backup, and it took us as far as we could go, but we are going a little bit further right now. So here we are. Let's dive in because this is a little bit longer than normal, but it's worth every single sentence. And we're entering the month of August, so it's a new series. And it's about living beyond appearances and learning to see as Jesus saw. That's what this is all about. So this is week one of the August series, Living Beyond Appearances, discovering the spiritual psychology of Jesus and judging not according to appearances. So I think this is so important, so valued. I'm taking from the divine science roots that we have and blending it in with our principles from unity. It's all new thought. It's all good. It's all God. And this comes from a divine science work, a course on spiritual psychology. So I want to say something right off the bat, in the beginning, that may surprise you. Again, this series was inspired by an old divine science correspondence course, actually, entitled Spiritual Psychology. Now, it was written nearly a century ago, yet its central insight feels remarkably contemporary. But here's what captured my attention. The authors were not trying to teach psychology in the modern clinical sense. They were asking a far more important question. I want to just check my microphone. Right. All right, there we go. Mic is working. They were asking, how? How did Jesus think? How did Jesus think? How did Jesus see? How did he consistently see hope where others saw hopelessness? How did he remain peaceful when surrounded by fear? How did he recognize? Okay, I wanted to make sure that I was recording. I am sorry. But as we keep going here, how did he recognize possibility where everyone else saw impossibility? How could he stand before a storm, a disease, a hungry crowd, or even a cross and never allow appearances to become his reality? Those questions are just as important today as they were 2,000 years ago. Because if we're honest, most of us don't suffer because of what actually happens. We suffer because of what we believe what happens means. One unexpected diagnosis, one difficult conversation, one disappointing bank statement, one broken relationship, one frightening news report, right? And before long, our minds have already written the ending to the story. We conclude things that God has never concluded. We pronounce endings where God is still writing beginnings. That is why Jesus said, judge not according to appearances, but judge righteous judgment. Notice what he did not say. He didn't say ignore appearances. He didn't say pretend problems aren't real. He didn't say close your eyes and think happy thoughts. No, Jesus acknowledged appearances. He simply refused to let appearances have the final word. And there's a profound difference between those two. Let's take a deep dive into this. Our first judgment is seldom, very seldom, our best judgment. Have you ever noticed how quickly the mind reaches conclusions? Really, think about this. You receive a text message. Someone simply writes, maybe you haven't heard from them in a while, call me. We even put the tone in there, don't we? Call me, or call me, call me, right? But immediately your mind begins constructing a story. What happened? Is everything all right? Did I do something wrong? By the time you've made it to the phone call, you've already imagined half a dozen disasters. Then you discover they want to invite you to dinner, right? Isn't that amazing? They want to go get something to eat, catch up. Nothing actually happened. Yet emotionally, you lived through 6 imaginary tragedies. That is what appearances do. Appearances are remarkably persuasive. They whisper, this is all there is. This is how the story ends. This can never change. Yet almost every miracle recorded in Scripture began with an appearance that looked final. Sarah having a child when she was a seasoned citizen. Sarah appeared too old. Moses appeared too weak. David appeared too small, right? The Red Sea, oh my God, appeared impossible. How are we going to cross this thing? 5 loaves appeared insufficient. Lazarus appeared dead. He was gone. The cross appeared to be defeat. If appearances told the truth, there would be no Bible. So one of the first lessons in the spiritual psychology course asks a deceptively simple question. What is truth? What is truth? We know that truth is that which never changes, but it asks, what is truth? Not facts, truth. Facts change, right? Truth does not. Truth is that which does not change. Think about that. A child in school may be facing the fact of poor grades, but the truth of that child is not failure. Someone may experience financial hardship. That may be today's fact. Been there, done that. But lack is never God's definition of anyone. A person may receive a frightening medical diagnosis. Oh, yeah. That diagnosis deserves wisdom, compassion, and appropriate care. But according to Jesus, illness never defines the soul. Facts describe a present condition. Truth reveals an eternal identity. Jesus always ministered from truth into facts. Truth into facts. He never allowed facts to redefine truth. That may be one of the greatest spiritual lessons we can ever learn. If you take nothing away from today, take that away. Don't allow facts to redefine truth, what is absolute truth. So as I studied the Gospels again for preparing this series for this month of August, over the past few weeks, something kept appearing. Jesus had an extraordinary ability, a lot of extraordinary abilities, but he never confused a person's condition with their identity. We do it all the time, don't we? We say, he's an addict. She's divorced. He's unemployed. She's depressed. He's always depressed. He's difficult. He's difficult. She's a failure. Notice what happens. A temporary condition becomes a permanent identity. But Jesus refused to do that. To everyone else, the leper was a leper. To Jesus, he was a beloved child of God, temporarily experiencing leprosy. To everyone else, the blind man was blindness. To Jesus, he was sight, waiting to awaken. To everyone else, the sinner was their sin. To Jesus, they were God's image beneath years of mistaken believing. That changes everything, because what we consistently see, we eventually strengthen. This is about seeing and how we look at things and through what lens. Remember, one of my favorite teachers, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, said when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. What about the woman everyone had already judged? One of my favorite stories is found in the Gospel of John. The religious leaders dragged before Jesus a woman caught in adultery. Notice something. Nobody asks her name. Nobody wonders about her story. Nobody considers her future. She has become her mistake. They don't see a daughter. They see a case, a scandal, a legal problem, an example, an embarrassment. And they ask Jesus, what should we do with her? What should we do with her? Their eyes see guilt. Jesus sees possibility. Their eyes see condemnation. Jesus sees restoration. Their eyes see a finished story. Jesus sees another chapter waiting to be written. So instead of answering immediately, Jesus kneels. He writes something in the dust, in the sand, right? Silence fills the courtyard. One by one, stones begin falling. They drop the stones they had in their hands. Until finally, only Jesus and the woman remain. Then comes one of the most beautiful words in Scripture. Jesus says to the lady, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Now, please notice, Jesus did not approve of her actions. Grace is never permission, but neither does he allow her worst decision to become her eternal identity. He separates the woman from what she had done. That is how divine love always sees. The gospel never tells us what Jesus wrote in the sand. I know earlier on, before he knelt down to write in the sand, he does say, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. But it never tells us what he wrote in the sand. Isn't that fascinating? For 2,000 years, people have wondered, did he write the commandments? Did he write the secret sins that he knew of the men standing there? Did he write the words of Jeremiah? Those who turn away from me shall be written in the earth. We simply don't know. Perhaps that is intentional, because the point is not what he wrote. The point is what happened while he wrote. The noise stopped. The energy settled. The accusations stopped. Everyone had to stop looking at the woman and begin looking at themselves. Sometimes God does his deepest work in the silence between our questions and his answers. I think that's stronger than trying to identify what Jesus wrote. All right, so I broke up today's message into 3 parts to help us digest this and receive the spiritual nourishment I really want you to get out of this. Such a powerful talk today and a powerful series. And this next part is about miracles begin to happen when you see what you already have. There's another story that beautifully illustrates this, beautifully illustrates what Jesus meant when he said, "Judge not according to appearances." It comes from the 4th chapter of 2nd Kings. And ironically, this is where the Bible class was when I first joined ministerial school, 2nd Kings. So anyway, within this and within the story, a widow comes to the prophet Elisha. She's terrified. Her husband has died. The creditors are coming. According to the customs of that day, they can take her 2 sons to satisfy the debt. Can you imagine the fear? She isn't worried about money anymore. She's worried about losing her children. Everything about her situation appears hopeless. She comes to Elisha expecting him to perform a miracle. Instead, he asks a question. One simple question. What hast thou in the house? What do you have in the house? I've always found that to be an unusual response. If someone comes to us in desperate need, we usually begin by talking about what they don't have, right? It's human nature. That's how we converse. They don't have enough money. Well, they don't have enough strength. They don't have enough opportunity. They don't have enough support. But Elisha doesn't ask what she's missing. He asks what remains. And she answers almost dismissively. She says, and I quote, "Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house save a pot of oil." Did you hear it? I have nothing except, I have nothing except. How often do we speak the same language? I have nothing except good health. I have nothing except wonderful children. Can't say that. I have nothing except faithful friends. I have nothing except a lifetime of experience, right? I have nothing except my faith. We minimize the very thing through which God intends to work. She almost overlooked the miracles because it looked too ordinary to her. The oil wasn't impressive. It wasn't enough. It certainly wasn't the answer she expected. Yet, it became exactly that. I wonder how many miracles begin as something we, here and now, almost dismiss. A conversation, an idea, a skill, an opportunity, a friendship, a small act of kindness, a single prayer. Appearances say, oh, that's insignificant. Spirit whispers, that's enough. That's enough. What do you have? God always has had a remarkable way of multiplying what people are willing to offer, what people recognize they do have. 5 loaves, 2 fish, 1 shepherd's sling, right? 1 mustard seed, 1 widow's oil, 1 willing heart. The miracle didn't begin when the oil multiplied. The miracle began the moment she finally recognized what she already possessed. That is spiritual seeing. What about Bartimaeus? You remember this one? Bartimaeus saw before he could see. This is another story that has always fascinated me. Blind Bartimaeus sat beside the road begging, just begging. The crowd saw a blind beggar. Jesus saw something entirely different. Bartimaeus heard Jesus was passing by. He began shouting, "Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me." The crowd immediately tried to silence them. Isn't that interesting? They tried to silence them. Crowd, noise, crowds. We can think about that as our internal thoughts to our dialogue, the internal chatter. The crowds often become guardians of appearances. Stay where you are. Know your place. Stay in your lane. Don't get your hopes up. But Bartimaeus kept shouting, kept shouting. Finally, Jesus called him, and before Bartimaeus ever received his sight, Jesus asked, "What wilt thou that I should do unto thee?" Now that sounds almost unnecessary, doesn't it? Wasn't it obvious? But Jesus was always inviting people to participate in their own awakening. Bartimaeus had to name the vision before he could experience it. Long before his physical eyes opened, his inner sight already had. He had already seen himself differently. A person with sight. That is where transformation begins. The outer life follows the inner vision. That's how it works. Jesus wasn't simply healing eyes, he was awakening perception. So, what's all this righteous judgment? What is righteous judgment? Metaphysically, right use of, right? Right use of the what we've been given, what we do have in our spiritual toolbox, right? I don't believe Jesus meant righteous judgment was about becoming more critical. Quite the opposite. The word righteous points toward seeing things as God sees them. It's refusing to make your final conclusion from your first observation. Isn't that what we do, though? It's remembering that appearances tell only the first chapter. God always sees the whole story, right? That changes how we look at people. Instead of saying, they'll never change, we begin asking, what does God already see in them? Instead of saying, my life is falling apart, we begin asking, what is trying to come together? Instead of saying, this is the end, we begin asking, what new beginning is hidden here? Get excited about it. Zeal, right? Our power of zeal. Those are radically different questions, different ways we can see everything. Better question, or I should say, better questions produce better lives, because wherever attention goes, and we talk about this all the time, consciousness follows. And wherever consciousness follows, our experience begins to grow. Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, often reminded us that faith is the perceiving power of the mind, the ability to perceive the reality of spirit before the physical senses confirm it. Faith is not pretending. Faith is seeing more deeply. Faith is trusting God's truth before appearances have caught up to that truth. And perhaps that's why Jesus could remain so peaceful throughout it all. He was never ignoring circumstances. He wasn't ignoring them. He simply refused to give circumstances the authority to define reality. Wow. Think about that. How often do we let circumstances and appearances define our relative reality. It's another talk for another day. So, what about seeing ourselves as, as Jesus sees us? There's one final person we need to consider here in this message here today. And it may be the most important one. It isn't the widow. It isn't Bartimaeus. It isn't the woman caught in adultery. It is you. Because after hearing all these stories, it's still very easy to think, yes, Jesus saw those people differently. The real question is, how does Jesus see you? How does God see you? How does God see this? How do you think Christ, the Christ of God, the Christ, the essence of God, your divinity, the divinity that God is in you, the divinity that is, the I am that I am. How do you think Christ sees you when you are discouraged? When you've failed or believed that you have failed? When you've spoken words you wish you could take back? When you've disappointed yourself? When you've prayed for something that still hasn't happened? Does he see a failure, a disappointment, a hopeless case? Or does God still see the divine image that has never been damaged? I believe one of the greatest obstacles to spiritual growth is that we continue seeing ourselves through yesterday's appearances instead of today's truth. Some of us are still introducing ourselves by wounds that God stopped identifying us with years ago. But that's what we identify with. That's what we even protect. We even claim it as a badge of honor. I've always been anxious. I've never been good enough. I've always struggled. My family's always been this way. I'm just not fill in the blank. And in our leadership development business, in our goal achievement business, people all the time will claim things as their identity that are just not true. People wear these things as a badge of honor. I know Tonay, with all the work that she's done helping people to overcome type 2 diabetes, she'll be talking to people and they'll say, "Oh no, you can't take that away. It can't go it can't go away. You can't." Yeah, that's mine. I mean, they defend it. We defend all this negative things, these false identities, right? I'm just not, or I am, and it's an untruth. And again, they may describe as experiences or temporary appearances, but they do not describe your identity. You are not your worst day. You are not your greatest fear. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your bank account. You are not your title. You are not your past. You're not even the opinions other people may have formed about you. That's a big one. You are not other people's opinions of you. Scriptures tells us that we are made in the image and likeness of God, that we are divine. Our second unity principle, our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. This divine essence is called the Christ. It was fully expressed in Jesus. We are that now. I am that I am. You are that you are. Not someday, now. The image may become covered, shadowed, cloaked. It may become forgotten even. It may become buried beneath years of fear or disappointment. But it's never, ever destroyed. And Jesus spent his ministry, that's what his life was, a ministry. He spent his ministry uncovering what had always been there, not creating something new, revealing something eternal. Perhaps salvation is less about becoming someone else and more about remembering who we've always been. And let me just, share something personal right here, if I may. Story from my own life. There have been moments, many moments in my own life when appearances seem to have all the evidence. Years ago, what, almost 18 years ago, I lay in a hospital bed while physicians explained that the situation was extremely serious. From a medical standpoint, yeah, the appearance was very grim, fatally grim. The statistics, the prognosis, the conversations in the room, all of them pointed in one direction, right? Fear would have been an understandable response. And I'm telling you, I had certainly had moments when fear knocked on the door, kicked in a little bit. But somewhere beneath all the medical facts was another voice. When I say voice, I'm saying voice with an uppercase V. Another voice, not loud, not dramatic, simply steady. Another voice, a quiet knowing that my life belonged to God before it belonged to circumstances. That did not mean I ignored the physicians. It did not mean I refused treatment. It meant I refused to allow appearances to become my final authority. I chose to cooperate fully with those who were caring for me while placing my deepest trust in the presence of God, the omnipresence that God is working through every person, every decision, every moment, through everything. Looking back now, I'm an example of this. I can honestly say that that experience changed the way I read the Gospels and the way I live my life. I no longer hear Jesus inviting us to deny reality. I hear him inviting us to discover a reality deeper than what our eyes first report. Sometimes faith does not change circumstances overnight. In fact, it rarely does. Sometimes faith changes the one who is walking through the circumstances, and that can occur almost instantly. And when we change, we begin to see differently. When we see differently, we begin to live differently. And when we live differently, the outer life often begins to follow. So let's practice this spiritual seeing. I'm all about, today's all about application and action. What does this look like tomorrow morning? What does this look like beyond the sermon, beyond this message, beyond this YouTube video, this Facebook Live, this Zoom room? Because sermons should never end with a click of a button beyond the church doors. No. Suppose you wake up tomorrow morning and immediately your mind begins listing everything that is wrong. Instead of following that train of thought and asking, what's wrong? Where am I? What's wrong? Pause. Ask another question. What truth is trying to reveal itself here? Throughout your day, if someone disappoints you, before deciding who they are, remember the woman standing before Jesus. There's always more to a person than the worst thing they have done. If you feel overwhelmed, remember the widow. Ask, what oil is already in my house that I have overlooked? If your future feels uncertain, remember Bartimaeus. Don't allow the crowd of fearful thoughts to silence the deepest cry of your heart. If your circumstances seem impossible, remember Jesus. He never allowed appearances to become conclusions. Perhaps this week, we could all practice one simple discipline. Every time something difficult happens, instead of immediately deciding what it means, simply whisper, there is more here than I can presently see. I know there is more here than I can presently see. That single sentence creates room for God. It interrupts fear. It loosens the grip of appearances. It opens consciousness to possibility that anxiety never notices. And isn't that what faith really is? Not certainty about outcomes, but confidence in God's presence, God's omnipresence. There's no place we can go where God is not. There's nothing outside of God. So let's practice this right now in more of a meditative state. I'll put on some background music for you. And I invite you now, if you're comfortable, to just gently close your outer eyes. Just get comfortable, taking a deep breath, settling into the here and now, settling into this moment really is what we're doing. Taking a slow, deep breath, a few of them, right? Settling into the presence and awareness of the presence of God. Allow your body to become still. Allow your breathing to become simply natural. You're not trying to control your breath at all. There's nowhere you need to go. All right? Nothing you need to accomplish except being fully present right here, right now. Aware of the presence of God that is already here, that is always here. Now, what I invite you to do right here in this place, in this space, is bring to mind one situation in your life that has been weighing heavily upon you. Don't choose 10, choose one. Perhaps it concerns your health, perhaps someone you love, perhaps your work, perhaps someone at your work, perhaps a decision you need to make. Simply allow it to come into your awareness gently. Notice the appearance. Notice what your senses have been reporting. Just notice. Notice the conclusion your mind has been tempted to make without judging yourself. Simply notice. Now, imagine Jesus standing beside you. Not to fix, not to criticize, not to condemn, simply to see. See what he sees. Notice the calmness in his presence. Notice that he is not frightened by what frightens you. He's not overwhelmed by what overwhelms you. He's not discouraged by what discourages you. His vision reaches beyond appearances. Ask him gently and silently, Lord, how do you see this? How do you see this one thing? How do you see this? And don't force an answer, just simply remain open. Perhaps no words come. Perhaps only peace around all of it. Maybe you deepen into peace. Perhaps only a gentle assurance. That is enough. That is what you have. Now hear again his invitation. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge by righteous judgment. Allow these words to settle into your heart. Take another slow breath, deep slow breath, and affirm quietly within yourself, there is more here than appearances reveal. There is more here than appearances reveal. Affirm, God's truth is greater than my first impression. God's truth is greater than my first impression. True. Affirm, I choose to see with the eyes of Christ. I choose to see with the eyes of Christ. The presence of God is already working where I cannot yet see. I love that one. The presence of God is already working where I cannot see. Just rest there for just a few moments. In quiet gratitude, there is more. In holy expectation, rest there. Can you rest in holy expectation? There is good here. There is good. If there is God in all, what is the good in this? What is the God in this? I rest in holy expectation and quiet gratitude, knowing that divine love has never stopped seeing the truth here now, the truth of who you are, the truth I am. Just allow yourself to deepen into all of this, to agree that yes, there is a different way that I can see beyond what the appearances are presenting to me. Gently allow yourself to come back to this time and place whenever you're comfortable, or stay in the meditative and reflective place, and just know, man, I believe the world is hungry for all of this, for all of us, for people who see differently. Look around you. Anyone can react. Anyone can criticize. Anyone can assume the worst. But disciples of Jesus are invited to become witnesses to a deeper reality. We become people who recognize possibility before it becomes visible, who speak hope before circumstances improve, who recognize the image of God in people long before they recognize it in themselves. We rise, and we are those who refuse to confuse condition with identity. That was the genius of Jesus. He did not merely teach people how to behave. He taught them how to see, how to really see. Because when vision changes, life changes. Next week, we'll continue this journey as we discover what it means to think with the mind of Christ, to uncover the wisdom that has been placed within us from the very beginning. So until then, when appearances begin shouting their conclusions at you, pause. Remember the widow. Remember Bartimaeus. Remember the woman whose story was not over. And remember the words of Jesus. Judge not according to the appearance. May we all go into this week seeing a little more as Jesus saw, asking, how would God see this? Loving a little more as Jesus loved, and trusting a little more in the truth that has always been present, even when appearances tried to tell us otherwise. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. Now please remember, we are live next week in our space in Fort Walton Beach, serving those of you here on the Emerald Coast. So we'll go a little bit later, streaming out to Facebook at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 Eastern. So a little bit later next week, because we're coming to you live. For those of you that are local to the area, please come out and see us. 105 Lewis Street. Lewis Street is right off of Beale. If you were to come out of the parking lot between Walmart and the Walmart gas station, directly out from Sam's Club, and go straight across the street, that's Lewis. Just south of Chick-fil-A, and you keep going east on that street. About 1,000 feet, it'll be on your right, 105 Lewis Street. That's where we meet. That's where our office, Emerald Coast Longevity, is, and that's where we use the common space to share when we come together on Sundays. So we'll see you there. Thank you for being with us today. Come on back to this message, share it with someone, invite them in, and live from the truth that you know and see with the eyes of Christ. This is Reverend Dr. Stephen J. 𝗂𝗂𝗀𝗂𝗀 wishing you an infinitely spectacular day. God bless you.